Hi friends, my name is Lindsey and I run the blog Books for Christian Girls, and welcome back to the little corner of the internet where I talk mainly about Christian fiction. Today is a recent read, so it's Christian fiction, clean fiction, and even two classics. Who am I? That's never happened before on this channel, me talking about two classics in the same video. Never. I don't do classics, and there might be a reason for that, but we're going to discuss it at the end. Welcome to maybe a new filming setup? I'm not sure. I feel like I keep adjusting the camera and I'm not quite sure. I'm going to move around, I think, in this video as well, because I've never filmed with the new bookshelves. That was our last week's video, was the new bookshelves, putting them all together, and they look great. They look great. I have so much space though, so like ideally I'd like to film in my chair, but I don't know. We're going to play with this. Let me know y'all's thoughts, the angles, everything. We're going to try it out though for this video. I honestly don't know if I like this. I feel like, should I be like here? Maybe I should scooch over a little. Should I scooch like here maybe? Is that better? That might be a bit better. Then you see more of the books. Maybe. We'll stick with this for right now. But in my last recent reads, I did it a little differently. Typically, I would organize my books in genres for Christian fiction and then clean fiction. But last time I did where I put all of the Christian fiction in one category and just ranked them from low to high, and then the same with all the clean fiction I've read. And I kind of liked doing that. I liked editing it. I liked talking about them in that order. The only negative part is that I'm talking about my 1-star books or my low star reviews right off the bat, and that feels a little, well, negative, you know? So I'm not quite sure if I like that, but I thought we would try it once more today and see what we all think. But feel free to leave your opinion in the not the description. I put stuff in the description. Y'all leave stuff in the comments. This video is a hot mess already. Oh boy. But if you would like to leave y'all's thoughts on which version y'all prefer, let me know. I do put in parentheses what the genre is with the timestamps in the description, so y'all can skip around to wherever y'all would be interested in. I'm not sure. There's pros and cons to both ways. You know, I like both ways for different reasons, but we're going to try one more video maybe this way, and then the next recent reads might be something totally different. I don't know. We're just going to go with it. But starting with Christian fiction, I unfortunately have 2 1-stars. Such a shame. The first 1-star is going to be Bailey McKenzie by Tina R. Young. This is a Christian young adult book that caused a lot of controversy, actually, and I thought that was very interesting. My review, I have snippets of the book and dialogue and just examples of things that I personally would not be okay with promoting in this book. So feel free to check out my review. It's incredibly detailed, as all my reviews are. There will be links to all of these books' reviews in the description below. But with Bailey McKenzie, she is 14 years old and her mom is a forensic scientist. And so she has basically pulled Bailey and these group of other little geniuses to come and work with her on different murder cases, different crime scenes. And that premise just intrigued me so much. I was so intrigued by that. I love the suspense genre, but seeing that in a Christian YA side, I was very excited. I had super high hopes for this book. But I did not care for Bailey or things she said or did or reactions to different things. I was going to kind of explain a lot more about that in this video, but in all honesty, I kind of just want to be done with this book. Have you ever had a book like that where it was such a disappointment you just want to forget it exists? That's how I feel about this book. Mainly because this isn't the best example, but if you know Holly from Holly's Heart, that series by Beverly Lewis, and how the girl is kind of so annoying, Bailey was like that, but on a different level. And I note that because of the disrespectful attitude she had towards her parents and how she had a crush on a literal adult man. And I even sent snippets of this book to some different book friends saying, okay, I know I'm sensitive to some of the things in this book, and mainly in the sense of bratty main characters being disrespectful to their parents. So I was like, hey, let me know y'all's thoughts. I could totally be viewing this from my own perspective, which I am. That's how we do. We view things from our own perspective. But I want to hear y'all's opinion. I think I heard back from about 30 of them, and every single one of them commented on how it wasn't okay to see a 14-year-old crushing on a 24-year-old who is her dad's partner. And that she kept saying it wasn't a crush in the book, but a lot of her mannerisms are like, no, honey, that's a crush. And I just kind of wanted to big sister her and also slap her upside the head a couple points. I'm sorry, it's just so true, because her parents let her get away with things that I couldn't believe they let her get away with. And then also just how disrespectful she spoke to them. And most of my book friends that I contacted about this, because I wanted different perspectives. I wanted to see if, by reading these parts, and I gave them a good amount of the book, really, it feels like, and I listed all of those quotes and scenes at the end of my review, so you can decide as a parent or as a reader, is this okay to let your teen read, or if you are a teen, if you're interested in it. It had such high potential, but over half of them, commented on her attitude towards her parents, and how she would brush off their concerns or anything. And you could argue that there's some consequences, but it's not consequences from her parents, if that makes any sense. Like, it's not her parents giving her a punishment or grounding or anything like that. It was none of that. It was, she runs off into the middle of the road and gets hit by a car kind of situation. And then, yeah, you're going to get hurt. It was that kind of consequence, which, yes, technically you could, yes, that is a consequence. But that's a consequence of her own actions and not a parental figure going, you don't need to be running off because of whatever. She was very emotional. And I say this as someone who probably would have been called that as a teenager. This book just stressed me out so much and made me so upset to see what all happened in this book. And the ending of this book, the ending of this book, I want to so bad talk about it. But I feel like if I talk about certain things and allude to certain things, YouTube might demonetize me. They might. So, I'm not going to, but feel free to check out my full content review. And with all the parts and scenes and comments that were just unnecessary there at the end. Incredibly disappointed in this book. Incredibly. No. Okay, next 1-star book. This was also a disappointment. Every 1-star book is a disappointment. I don't know why I say that, but it is. I feel so like grr now. That book was just, I can't, I feel like I'm having like a hot flash or something, because that, Okay. Okay. The Gentleman's Spy by Erica Vetsch. I have had such high expectations for this book, because this series is connected to the Thorndike and Swan mystery series, Regency mystery series, which I've been talking about on this channel for a few years now, I think. Really enjoyed that trilogy. This series is connected to it. It was released prior. I didn't realize it. So, I've been wanting to read these. This is the book I've been really excited for because it features the main head spy that we see in the other series, and I've always wanted to know his story. Here's the problem with that. This whole trilogy is Marriage of Convenience, and I know I have a lot of friends who love that, and I mean no shame. I just don't like it because it typically adds in sexual tension that I don't think is necessary. I don't like that, okay? I don't like it. Bottom line, I don't like the Marriage of Convenience trope because of sexual tension. And this book. Yes. Also, this is not how I pictured the main guy at all. I don't know who this is, but it sure isn't Marcus. I think this author really likes the Marriage of Convenience trope for some reason, because her next series that I was so excited for is also going to be Marriage of Convenience. And I was like, oh, you're kidding. No. No. Because I was so excited for that book. The Marriage of Convenience trope just adds in sexual tensions. It adds in intimacy details and fade to black scenes and kisses that go on so much because they're married. It's fine. But I don't personally want to read that, and I definitely don't think those in the Books for Christian Girls target market of 9 to 19 should be reading that. So, yeah, that was just a disappointment. There's that word. One other thing that didn't have to do with the Marriage of Convenience, and I realized I wrote this in my review, so I'm glad I did that, was that in the first book of the series, the main girl had a lot of negative thoughts and comments about God because of situations, and the main girl of this book also had that. And she believes in him, but she doesn't think God's ever done anything good for her. And that thinking, but at the very, very, very end, she realizes, oh, that's not true. God loves me. He's protected me. Well, no joke. Because that's my problem, though, with... In the first book, it kind of felt like the main guy was being the main girl's savior, and I don't like seeing that savior trope. But with this one, it was more of... She's mad at God for like 90% of the book, and in the last 10% we get a quick paragraph turnaround of, oh no, she's good with God. I mean, if we're getting 90% of the book where there's like kind of snide comments, I expect more than just like a paragraph or two about that faith change. I don't know, that's just me. But yeah, this was unfortunately another miss. I totally forgot to say that A Gentleman's Spy, that was Regency historical romance. So, sorry, there's that. The next book I have is The Minor Miracle by Meredith David. I gave this one 2.5 stars. This is a middle grade... It's by a Christian publisher, but it's very light Christian content. So it's more, I would say, like, it could compete against a secular market book, but there's a few positive comments about God or praying. Which, yes, that is more than I can say for a lot of secular middle grade books being published nowadays. But is it really Christian? Then we can argue and debate that, which we won't, but you could. So this is about Noah, who is 12 years old, and he is a superhero fanatic. And that seems to stem from when he was a baby, he was dropped out of a very tall building, like off of it. He was dropped off, but he was fine. And that, turns out, is because of hereditary abilities. He thinks of it as superpowers, but he's constantly being told it is not superpowers. But like I said, he's a superhero fanatic. So he is just, he's a superhero now. That's awesome. But he's got to train and learn and do all the kinds of things to find out how to use his abilities for good. And it was an interesting premise. I'm not big into superhero movies, but I have read quite a few superhero books and enjoyed them pretty well. This one I didn't love personally, but I do feel like if you were a middle school boy or a preteen boy, you would probably enjoy it. Or if you are a girl who has a brother in that age range, you may enjoy it. Personally, there was a lot of like farts, jokes, and poop, and belching, burping, all that kind of stuff, and I don't do that. That is, you mentioned it 3 times, I'm done. This book mentioned it all those way more than 3 times. So that was, for me, I was just like, this isn't my thing. So it had an interesting premise, but there was little things that I was just like, I'm not loving this. I wasn't enthralled by it. I do think it's just a thing of I'm not the right market for it personally. Some definitely will enjoy it more than I did. I just didn't. It was interesting though, because a lot of the adults in this book, you really didn't know who to trust, because you've got this organization that's trying to train Noah, but they're threatening that if he tells anybody about them, even his parents, that they're gonna wipe his memories, and like then he'll never know he has his powers or whatnot. And I was like, okay, not really loving them. And then you have his great uncle, who's got a really bad reputation, but seems to be a great guy to Noah. And so there's a lot of lessons and learning who to trust in this book. So the rest of the series will probably be better in that regard. I assume it's a series. Actually, I take that back. I don't know if it's a series. It ended where it could be a standalone, but I feel like it's going to be a series. That's just my thought. That could be totally wrong. But there was lessons, of course, and that kind of thing. It just wasn't my kind of read. So there you go. Another book I read recently was a mystery, and that is History Lost and Found by Beth Adams. This is book 1 in the Secrets from the Grandma's Attic series, published by Guidepost. I gave it 3 stars. It was interesting, but I want to real quick note some trigger warnings. So for those sensitive to adoption, out-of-wedlock pregnancies, and then babies being taken away from their mothers, sometimes without the mothers having a choice, and also asylum I can't say that word. This word. Institution. No. My tongue some days is just like, it doesn't want to work. But like asylum situations, and that was a lot of what this book was. It has a lot about family secrets. And it was interesting. So basically the premise is our main girl is Tracy. And like with many of the Guidepost books, she is middle-aged. If I say that, am I going to get fussed at by those who are in that age range in my comments? I might. I'm sorry. She's married. She's got, I think she has grandkids. Yes, I think she had grandkids. Like, that's the typical main character for Guidepost mysteries, at least for the contemporary ones. And so she has recently inherited-ish. She's been living with her grandmother. Her grandmother has passed away. Her and her husband have been taking care of her grandmother. She has passed away. And so now they're basically going through her house. And there are apparently secrets in Grandma's attic, hence the title of the series. And there seems to be like a birth secret here and all that kind of stuff. It was very interesting, and then my mind was trying to work like, okay, where is this going? Can I figure this out? And I figured out elements of it, which I always like doing. It was interesting. It was different. I didn't love it though. It's not enthralled me into the series where I think I'm going to try to find all of them and read them all in order. I own the second book in this series, so I think I'll just read that one and decide. I didn't love it. I feel like there's better Guidepost mystery series, at least just based off of this book, but it wasn't bad. I didn't love it, but it wasn't bad. One little note I want to mention about this, and I feel like this could potentially start a comment or in the comments, so, No, I'm going to say it anyway. This is really messy. Like, real life, messy. Family dynamics, it's messy. This book really highlighted that well. But one part of this is that they talked about an out-of-wedlock pregnancy being a mistake towards the beginning. And that wasn't really ever corrected. It was regarded as like, everyone makes mistakes and no one's perfect, so we all need God's grace. True. 100% true. We all need the good Lord's grace. And yes, we all do make mistakes. But I don't feel like it's right to say that creating a child is a mistake. Like, I think back of the Christy Miller series by Robin Jones Gunn, in I think it was volume 1 or 2 of the collections. Somebody becomes pregnant out of wedlock, and the girl is told that it's not a mistake, that the good Lord knew, and that not even angels can create a life. Like, that is such a miraculous thing. And that's really stuck with me all my years. All my years, that makes me sound old. Or that I've lived a lot, which, debatable. But that's been with me for 10 plus years. And having known those who have had children out of wedlock, and then also friends who were born out of that situation, I just don't feel like that's right to say a baby is a mistake. I feel like that can be damaging. So, yeah, just a little note on that. That might not be a popular opinion. But personally, I go back to that Christy Miller scene where it was just, no child is an accident. And I think that the word a mistake makes it sound like an accident. And I don't like that. Because, yeah. Anyway, we're just having controversial thoughts left and right in this video. So I probably won't be keeping that book. It was fine. Enjoyed aspects of it, but I don't really see the need to keep it. Okay, we have 2 books in the same series. And one I liked more than the other, which was actually the first book, and the second book I gave a lower rating. So I'm gonna mess up our little lowest rating to highest rating little order here, and we're gonna discuss book 1, then book 2. Even though I gave this one 3 stars and this one 2 stars, we're gonna discuss it though. So this is a military suspense series. There's 4 books. I'm halfway through them. I will be reading the other 2. I own them. I'm very intrigued by this, but we have trigger warnings because this is a heavy series with hard topics. And in all reality, I'm holding it upside down. I wouldn't recommend, I can already say, I wouldn't recommend this series to those in BFCG's age range of 9 to 19. Unless it's an older girl, like right at the, like aging out of BFCG's category, if you will, but which no one aids out. You are all welcome here. But only then, and if they are incredibly interested in law enforcement or the military or things like that, because these are heavy. These are heavy. There's justice at the end, which helps with that heaviness, but like I still cried. You know, I still cried. So there's that. So for book 1, this is Collateral Damage by Lynette Eason. Our main girl is Brooke, and she was honorably discharged from the military after being involved in an explosion, and she's actually a psychiatrist. And so she has come back to the States. I think it was North Carolina. I just read book 2 and I can't even remember these details. Lindsey, pitiful. Yeah, oh, South Carolina. Forgive me. Different Carolina. But our main guy is Asher, and he is great. I really, really like him. I'll come back to that. But he is having a lot of difficulties with his PTSD and nightmares, and so he makes an appointment to talk to Brooke, and when he gets there, nobody seems to be there, but her receptionist has been shot and killed. And so that was, there's, like, things happen. Like, wow, this is a thinner book. I feel like this is really thin. The spine looks thin. I don't know. It feels thin to me, but it's about 300 pages, a little over the actual story. Some of this is preview for the next, which is fine. It's just, you know, how you're reading a book and you're like, oh yeah, I've got this much. And then like the last 20 pages is an ad for the next book. You know that feeling. You have to know that feeling with me. So it just really just sets off onto a lot of things. But for the trigger warnings, I'm going to say warnings of children being harmed and killed off page, but there's many mentions of it throughout the book. And then organ trafficking. Yeah. And then corrupt military men. That probably just scared a bunch of y'all off. And I can't blame you. I sincerely cannot blame you. Had I not liked the main couple so much, Brooke and Asher were phenomenal together. They just felt so well matched and just got each other so well and bounced off each other so well. And also his humor. He was great. I liked his humor. In book 2, when we see his humor, I was like, there he is. I like this guy. So he was great. Really, really liked the two of them together. And that's what made the book for me. I just really, really enjoyed that element, and then some of the faith conversations. But like, just a heads up, it's got heavy topics. It's got heavy topics. So it's definitely not a book for everyone. Bottom line, they're not a book for everyone. That's all I really can say. This is not a book for everyone. If those are anything that you're like, nope, can't do, don't do it. Just don't read it. That's totally fine. I thought the main couple was great. I think they're one of my new favorite couples. But this is not going to be a book I'm honestly going to talk about often on my channel at all. Like, I'm going to talk about it here, and then I'll talk about it a bit in a video when we put it on the shelf. But elsewise, I don't think you're going to hear me talk about this book much because it's not a book I recommend to everyone. So I enjoyed it, and I gave it 3 stars, but like, it's hard to say you enjoyed a book where it talks about terrible events. You know, like, that's just hard to say, and you kind of feel like almost a psychopath, if you will. So I don't know. I enjoyed elements of it, and I really liked how the justice happened at the end. But again, not a book I'm going to recommend for everyone, and you won't hear me talk about it much on my channel. So moving on into book 2, that is Acceptable Risk. Why am I struggling with these titles? I mean, I struggle with a lot of books and words and titles, but Acceptable Risk. And this is about Sarah, and she is part of the friend group that Brooke is a part of. And we actually see in that first book, we see Sarah's brother's point of view, and he will be the main lead of book 4, which I'm excited to read about that one because I really like Caden. I think he's a great character. But in this book, how can I explain this in a summary? So in the very beginning of this book, Sarah is being held captive by these men in this terrorist group in Afghanistan. And it turns out there's a lot more to that, but she gets rescued by our main guy, Gavin. And Gavin and the main guy from book 1 actually work together. They've got like a private security firm, which is what seems to happen a lot in these books. The guys get out of law enforcement, or they get out of the military and they create their own public security firm. I feel like that's like the third or fourth, actually. I'll have to think about that. That is a very common thread. Anyway, my chair is squeaky, I'm sorry. But so Sarah gets rescued by Gavin and his team, and because of the things she's gone through, her father, who is a general, pulls strings to get her shipped back home because of her PTSD. And she definitely has PTSD, but she doesn't have thoughts of self-harming, which I give that now because that is a major trigger for this book. She comes home to find out that her younger brother has committed suicide. And so lots of trigger warnings for that regard right there with suicides. We actually, the first chapter is a different character jumping off a building, and that's hard to read about. And then we have many, many mentions of other suicides happening, and then even some suicidal thoughts on page, and then just like the grief over deaths of family members. Like it had its hard moments. I cried a lot. Not gonna lie, I cried a lot because that is such a sensitive topic to me, both of those. So again, not one I'm gonna recommend. Don't know if I'm keeping this one though, because there's justice at the end, but at the same time, it wasn't satisfying enough. Like the first book, I was satisfied as well as you can be, I feel like, with that ending. I wasn't as satisfied with this ending, which was unfortunate. So I'm not sure if I'm keeping this one. I probably won't. I gave it 2 stars. Probably won't keep it, but I liked the first book. But not a book for everyone. Both of those books, not a book for everyone. I'm very nervous, lack of a better word, I'm nervous about what books 3 and 4, I'm looking that way because they're on my physical TBR over there, and I'm nervous about what hard topics are they going to discuss. Are they going to make me cry too? Very likely. Very likely. I have 2 middle grade books back to back that I gave both of them 3.5 stars. I think I would put Jack versus the Tornado though first for this ranking. Well, like second place. The next one will be first place. That makes better sense. And this was by Amanda Cleary Eastep, maybe is how you pronounce the author's name. I'm not sure if it's Eastep or Eastep. I feel like you could accent it different ways, so I'm not quite sure. This was pleasant. I gave 3.5 stars, like I said. This was pleasant. I didn't even really know about this series, and then I randomly saw it on my library's Libby app, and I was like, wow, that looks great. Problem with that is, for some reason, some weird reason, they only have books 1 and 3. What happened to 2? It looks like it's going to be a 5-book series, and the 5th book is releasing in the fall, so I'm excited about checking those out. Hopefully I can get my hands on book 2. Gotta get my hands on book 2 because the library isn't. I've requested it and they're ignoring me, it feels like. No, they're probably not ignoring me. They might be ignoring me. I request a lot of books from them to buy. So sorry to my library. This is actually set in the 1990s, which I thought was really different. I liked it though because it had such a nostalgic childhood feel to it, and I thought that was really fun. But this is about Jack, and his family has had to move off of his grandparents' farm because it's just getting too much to upkeep the farm, so they are moving to a suburb, and Jack's not happy about that. He's just not excited about it, to have to leave his loft in the barn that's like his special kind of treehouse, you know, and then his pet chicken. Like, he's not happy about this, so he's making the plans that he's gonna somehow raise money in this suburb new town to be able to keep the family farm, and I admire his thoughts on that. But this is basically his story of making friends and going on adventures with them, and, like, you know, riding their bikes around the neighborhood and talking to the old grump in the neighborhood, you know, that kind of thing. It was just very almost nostalgic. Kind of was. Like, I don't know why, but it was. And it was really sweet overall. Let's see, what else can I say about it? It was just overall pretty cute. I was pleasantly surprised by it. There actually was illustrations and a map throughout the book, and I just really like that little detail as well. Definitely looking forward to continuing the rest of the series as soon as I can get my hands on book 2. The other Christian middle grade book I read recently was Road Trip Rescue. Look how cute this cover is, by Becca, and I'm not sure how to pronounce the author's last name. I feel like I'm just going to mess it up, so I'm not going to attempt, but look how cute this cover is. And now here's the thing, I really like dogs, right? We know that. Speaking of that, drink tea, read books, be happy. I just needed to say, like, drink tea, read books, pet a dog, be happy, and there's my life motto right there. Excuse the wrinkles. There was a whole saga with the dryer this morning before I was supposed to film. We won't get into it. But I really like dogs, so I really like dog books. The problem with dog books is they are typically always sad. Bottom line, there are so many books I got told about as a kid. They're like, oh, Lindsey, you like dogs, you should read Old Yeller. No, I'm not. I know what's in that book. No, I'm never reading that one. I was recently, well not recently, but I was told a while back about the website doesthedogdie.com. Great website. Great. Appreciate that website. That is exactly my thing. So this book, I went in going, it's probably going to make me cry, but please don't make me cry. Please don't make me cry. It did make me cry. I can tell you it did in fact make me cry, but it wasn't because the dog died. Like, that's my number one, like, rule, I think, for dog books. And I've had a few of them. Couple? I think I've had 2 or 3 dog books this year where I'm just going in there going, please don't make me cry. Please don't cry. Don't let the dog die. Please don't make me cry. Don't let the dog die. Please don't make me cry. Because I don't like reading about animals dying. And so this book, the dog does not die. But I still cried because of scenes. I still cried. But this is about a girl named Kimmy, and she was actually born with 1 arm. And so she's gotten used to life, but because of ex-friends and kind of the popular girls at school making fun of her, she feels very alone. But she's always had her dog. And her dog, Bo, who is named after Boaz, which, hang on, yes, I bought this book on Kindle. Let me read you how Bo got his name because I got so tickled by it. This also had that middle grade nostalgic charm, and that is just a lovely, I love it when a middle grade book has that charm. It's great. I named Dad's dairy cows after Bible characters, so I named Bo after Boaz, Ruth's husband, who is basically the Prince Charming of the Bible. I don't know why that just got me so tickled. I thought that was so cute, that comment. So Bo, though, disappeared. Her family got back from a trip and Bo had disappeared. And she has been wondering for the last 2 years what happened to Bo. And then she sees a magazine picture of a dog that looks just like Bo, multiple hours away at an ice cream shop. And so she is just determined to find out what happened to her dog. Is that her dog? I think that's my dog. All of that, all those many thoughts. And she basically goes on a road trip with her aunt. And her aunt is a unique person. And of course they take stops along the way. And there's a lot of lessons for Kimmy to learn. And a lot of, like this one, I would say I had one of the most lessons out of middle grade books I feel like that I've read in the last few months. I really enjoyed a lot of aspects. I'll be getting a copy of this book from my own shelves because I did really enjoy it. But book 2 is actually releasing this summer, and it's about a boy we met in this book that Kimmy becomes friends with. So very sweet, a tearjerker. Not gonna lie, a tearjerker, but it's a bittersweet ending. But the dog does not die, so that's the important part to me. As far as Christian content, I do feel like there could have been more faith content worked into the story. There's an emphasis on Kimmy never being alone, that God is always with her, which is a wonderful, good message to have in a middle grade book. I just wish it would have been a little bit more of that. But in all reality, this is one out of all... Okay, so there's 3 middle grade books I've talked about today. Wow. I've read quite a few middle grade books. Go me! That's great. So out of the 3 I've read, though, that I've talked about today, this would be the one I would say could stand up in Barnes & Noble or like a secular bookstore against secular middle grade published books. I feel like this book could really stand up against them. Plot-wise, writing-wise, I feel like it could do really well in that regard, and it's got positive comments about God with faith threads. I think that would work well. Definitely going to be checking out the second book when it releases. The author did a Kickstarter and I had missed it by a couple days, and I'm kind of kicking myself because that would have been great to get an early copy of the second book, but I'll just have to wait for it to come out. But I am looking forward to that one. I actually gave 2 more books 3.5 stars, so let's talk about this one, and that would be The Kingdom's True Queen by Michaela Bush. This is book 4 in the Legends of Lanaria. I've heard different people pronounce it different ways. I really need to message the author and ask her how to say it. But this is following that world, and the author is really setting up a very complex political? Like, there's a lot of politics in this non-magical fantasy world, kind of medieval time period, if you will. Book 1 was a Rapunzel retelling, which is still my favorite in the series. My favorite Rapunzel retelling thus far that I've read. Really enjoyed it. And then book 2 had about a girl from a different kingdom that is at war with the main girl from book 1's kingdom. And so we've just got a lot of things happening. And this book was different. And it was different because it's set in a pagan country, and we follow our main girl, Ashta, maybe so you pronounce it, A-S-T-A. And it looks very pretty. I just don't know how to say it. Story of my life. And she is the queen's younger sister. And there's been a lot of challenges, to say the least. They are in a war. It's a very evil country. Dark magics are practiced, but not really magic. Like that's discussed in the first book. It's not really magic. It's just negativeness, basically. So it is, I would consider it to be non-magic, even though they use the word magics, dark magics, because it's not. It's not. I'm not explaining that well, but it's not actual magic content. The thing is, though, that this book is on the shorter side. It was about 190 pages, and while I wish it was longer, had it been longer, we would have been in the filth. Bottom line, we would have been more into the icky evilness that our main girl is having to go through, because she is being mistreated, she's being abused. There's mentions of human trafficking and men having their way with women, including her, and everything is kept very light, but there is a certain heaviness almost to it, because, like, if you read between the lines, basically, you get, I think, more of that heaviness, but actually, like, there's not really any mentions of details or anything like that. But because of that, I would give this one more of a caution that for the first time in the series, that I think it's better for older girls, but this is actually a very loose retelling of the story of Joseph from the Bible, which I thought was really interesting, because book 3 was very loosely inspired by Deborah in the Bible, which was also interesting. I don't know, I think this author does faith content very well. It's very strong? What's the word I'm looking for here? I've heard some people call it more charismatic, which I don't know about that, but it is very, like, spiritual gifts, and like in this case, our main girl in this book has prophetic dreams, and she prays to understand the meanings and that kind of thing. So it was very interesting. It's not your typical mainstream Christian fiction book, bottom line, which I like it for that aspect. So our main guy is Nicholas, and the romance does happen pretty quick between them. He is from, we actually have seen him, I think, in book 1 and book 2. We've seen him in either one of those or both of those, and he is from the good country, basically, that is fighting against the evil that other countries around them are partaking in. And so he is coming basically as an undercover spy to the country that Ashta has been living in after she was kidnapped, and he and her form a friendship, and the romance does feel pretty quick, but they were really cute together. He was just such a good guy. He was so patient. I really liked the two of them together. So I was okay that it was rushed, because I liked the two of them together. Like, I'm looking the other way on the rushed side because I liked them. So overall, I gave it 3.5 stars. I would give some cautions, or even like some sensitivity warnings, maybe not necessarily trigger warnings, but sensitivity warnings about like wars, evil regarding all of that, and then deaths, human trafficking, and then mentions of children being mistreated. So yeah, heads up for that. I do plan to get a physical copy for my shelves, but it is going to be the first book that I'm going to say maybe slightly older girls would do best with it. So my next book is another 3.5 stars, and that is Mrs. Witherspoon Goes to War by Mary Davis. I actually own a copy of this book and read it off my physical TBR. Y'all, I have like 7 books I've read off my physical TBR in this video. Can we just round of applause for me? I'm so satisfied by that. You can't tell. If you look at my physical TBR, you can't tell there's books missing, but I know there's books missing. I know, which is great. So I actually do own this book, but it is currently on loan out to my sweet book friend at my church, so don't have it to show y'all today. But here is the cover. Not my favorite cover, but this one was really interesting. This is part of the Heroines of World War II series, which y'all may remember I read The Cryptographer's Dilemma by Joni Alexander last year. One of my favorite books of the year. Really enjoyed it. I think I gave it like 4.75. These are in the same series, but they're not connecting. And neither of these books are super heavy in the World War II content. I don't know about y'all, but I struggle sometimes with World War II books because of just the injustice, the sadness in them, especially when they're set overseas. in the midst of all the fighting and everything, I just have a hard time that sometimes that's just too much for my heart. As I read books that have like suicides and organ trafficking, I'm aware of the irony of that. It depends on the day, y'all. It depends on the day. Depends on the day. But World War II books have always been kind of a hit or miss for me. But these two books I really enjoyed, and I think why I liked them is they weren't where the main characters are going off fighting in another country, or they're hiding for their lives in another country because they have to hide for whatever reason. And so I think that's a positive for me, that I'm finding, okay, I like World War II books and learning all the history of it, but not when it's got that heavy content where it's typically set overseas. Not the first book, but the first one I read in the series was The Cryptographer's Dilemma, like it said, and that one was kind of a road trip around the U.S., had to do with spies and codes, and I really enjoyed that. But with Miss Witherspoon Goes to War, this was actually, our main girl is Peggy, and she is a widow with 2 young girls, and her husband was killed overseas in action, and she has become a WASP, the Women's Air Force Service Pilots, Women's Air Force Service Pilots. I think that's the A. Is it aviation or Air Force? I think it's Air Force. Pretty sure. I only read it 1,000 times in the book. No, but I should know this. But it was fascinating in that regard, learning about all of the different aspects. And at first I thought it was a little too much plain content. I was like, this is a lot of gizmos about the flying and the things, and I was like, I don't know about that. But as the book continued and I started looking up what the planes looked like, I got way more interested in them. And so she is just really tough, really cool, and so many different things happen. This was a very thin book too, about 300 pages, a little less maybe? Right at about 300 pages. And it was very interesting for that part. And then our main guy is Howie, and Howie was injured overseas, and he has basically been shipped back, and he is kind of over her unit now, the WASP's NDC, but not quite. Like, he's over them, but not, if that makes any sense. I don't know how to explain it. It's still a little murky to me. Like, he's with the military, they are not, but they work in partner with the military. And so there is a lot of prejudice towards the women being pilots and just being female pilots in general. And we see that on page, and I just guess I never realized that the WASP women faced that in that time period, because I just thought like everyone would be like, oh, we're all pulling our own weight, we're doing what we can, and they did jobs so the men could focus on fighting overseas or getting things ready for the men overseas. They handled not the more minor stuff, because it was just as important, but a different level. And I didn't realize that, so that was really interesting and caused me to do a lot of bunny trails of research, which I love it when books give me bunny trails of research, especially historical fiction books. The one thing I didn't really care for in this book was the romance. I didn't really like Howie and Peggy together. I was kind of disappointed that it turned into a romance. Didn't really care for that, but it didn't ruin my enjoyment. I think I would have given it probably a 4 had the romance been different or not been there at all, but I gave it a 3.5. I did overall enjoy it. I thought it was really interesting. Yeah. So if you like World War II, or you just want to have a book where you're going to do research afterwards about history, maybe check out this book, because I definitely did that. I enjoyed it. I'm going to be looking into getting more books of this series, because, I don't know, I've had 2 winners right now. We'll find out if those are anomalies or if that's going to be the theme of the series. I hope it's the latter. The last book for Christian fiction is A Lady's Guide to Marvels and Misadventures by Angela Bell. Can we appreciate this cover? It looks really bright on camera. Sorry about that, but it is really pretty. I think it was really fun. Look at that nice dark blue spine. I actually read this one as an ebook and then bought my own copy, so this was not on my physical TBR, but basically all the other physical books were. And I still have a couple more to talk about here in another category. So, go me. But this is set in 1860s? Yes, 1860, exactly. And this, oh, the smell of a new book. It's lovely. This was really interesting though. This is historical fiction with steampunk elements. and I didn't know that going in. I had this on my anticipated releases, I believe, for this year, but I didn't know it was going to have steampunk elements, and I'm really glad I found that out before reading this book, because I think I would have been really confused had I not known that. But basically, our main girl is Clara, and her ex-fiance is sharing rumors that her family is insane. Certifiably insane, needs to go to an asylum and all that. And so she is trying to stand against those rumors and show people, no, we're not insane. But then her grandfather hires a man who's kind of sketchy to work at his watch clock shop. I can't think of the name of it, but you know, he does clocks, he does watches, all the gizmos and gadgets. And this guy won't tell Clara where he's from or really who he is, and then he's missing a leg, and so she's just kind of suspicious of him. And I mean, rightfully so. When you find out what she's been through, I can't blame the girl. But this was very interesting. Her grandfather goes off on an adventure. Clara is worried, of course, but her grandfather has left her clues, so it becomes like a scavenger hunt. I like scavenger hunts, my dear friends. I like treasure hunts. I like scavenger hunts. Put those in a book. I'm intrigued. So this book has been kind of deemed similar to Around the World in 90 Days. And they do travel a lot. They go to a lot of different places. They have to follow the clues, the architecture, just all. Again, this was another one I did research of bunny trails, because the architecture mentions and then the places that were mentioned and just different history. I was like, wow. This is fascinating. This is different. This was really neat to read a book set throughout many places in Europe. I really enjoyed it. And then we kind of become, let's see, we start off with their kind of enemies to more, and then they turn into rivals to more, and then friends to more. And I just thought that was really fun to see all of the progression of it. It felt very natural. That's like, it totally makes sense that our main girl is suspicious. She was a little much at first, but I could understand where she was coming from. But it was just really neat. There was good faith content. There was a lot of faith discussions, particularly because her mom, what a character. But she goes on these little adventures with the two of them, because obviously they can't be alone together. It's a historical time period. We need chaperones to protect our reputations. And she was just fun. She is a big animal rights advocate. Sounds weird for this time period, but like, she rescues animals and gets into mischief because of those animals, and it was just very humorous in that regard. I think a lot of people may not like her, but she reminded me of someone I know, so I was humored by her. I thought it was very funny. Our main guy, Theodore, though, we don't really know too much about him, and things get dropped and hinted along the way. But I really liked when he started kind of like, he just wanted to win over our main girl. Like, please don't hate me. I'm not a bad guy. I can't tell you about myself, but I'm not a bad guy. And so he just kind of does this wit that I really enjoyed, and then the humor. And then once that kind of moved into a bit of flirting, that was just... There was so many... I have multiple highlights from this book. I haven't tabbed my copy yet. I need to, but there was multiple parts. I just went, wow, that was smooth. That was good. And he kind of is that nerdy character, so sometimes it doesn't go well, but it was very entertaining regardless. It was interesting though, because it had its silly moments and the wit, but then it would kind of take almost a jarring turn where it would talk about deaths and the possibility of being put in an asylum. So it was a bit jarring at times because of that, but at the same time, that's real life some days and for some families, and I think this family definitely was having that, because they're trying to stay upbeat, but they're also trying to stay out of a mental asylum. So it was interesting. It was very different. It was not what I was expecting at all, but I enjoyed it. I'm very curious what will be next for this author, because this was such a cast of characters that felt very iconic to me, for lack of a better word. Like, it was just unique. It was just unique, so I'm very curious what she'll write next. But I enjoyed this one, and I gave it 4 stars. Okay, so that was all the Christian fiction. Quite a few, and now I have 4 books left to talk about. 2 clean fiction, 2 classics. So let's just go ahead and get started with the clean fiction with another 1 star. I'm sorry, it is what it is. That would be Desire or Defense by Leah Brunner. Just this title alone makes me cringe inside. I'm just saying. I knew from the author's note going in there was going to be a lot of mild language, but there was a lot. I knew there would be some, but there was a lot. Let's just put it that way. And I didn't really care for that, but basically the main guy is a grumpy hockey player. He has basically been benched? I don't know hockey. I keep attempting clean hockey rom-coms because there are no clean baseball rom-coms. I need baseball rom-coms, please and thank you, dear clean authors. Christian authors even better. I want baseball themed books. That is my sport. So I keep trying hockey books. I know nothing about hockey, as we've discussed in basically every recent reads, because I am a glutton for punishment and I keep reading them. And so he is a grumpy guy that's basically been, I don't know the word, benched? I'm just going to use that word. Basically he's been suspended. There we go, suspended. He's been suspended off of his team because he's a hothead and he has problems. And so he's got to coach this, like, Little League? I don't think that's right. Little League is a baseball term, isn't it? So basically this junior hockey team, he's got to go coach. And our main girl is the guardian of her younger brother who is on this team after their parents pass away. And so they butt heads, to say the least, because she is a spitfire of a nurse that has a mouth, and he is a grumpy hockey player who also has a mouth. And they don't just cuss with those mouths. They kiss a lot. So there is that. A lot of sexual innuendos. Many that I don't feel like were even necessary to add. And just, there was one chapter, particularly the final chapter, where it was like a really heavy fade to black scene that just went way past my comfort levels. So don't recommend this one. I just don't. I'm sorry. No. For a clean fantasy book, YA fantasy really, is this, well, fantasy, sci-fi. It's really sci-fi, and that is Suspended in the Stars by A. Hendryx. I'm going to put this as sci-fi. This has to do with outer space, so I feel like I've seen this marketed as a sci-fi, so we're going to call it a sci-fi, and in all reality, this is one of the few sci-fis I've read. I've never been raised with like Star Wars or Star Trek or anything like that, so I've never really been interested in things that happen in space, you know? So this was out of my comfort zone, but I was very curious. I believe this is being deemed as like an outer space The Greatest Showman. Is that movie? It's got like Zendaya and Zac Efron. I've never seen it. I have no interest in seeing it. I'm trying to think, how can I explain this book? She is a very well-known kind of like trapeze artist on this circus ship, and they go around to other planets. And at one point, this guy comes on and basically threatens our main girl. What was his name? Renner, and he is a guard that's having to be in hiding because of circumstances. Don't you love how vague I'm being? I don't want to give y'all spoilers on this book because I feel like you can see a lot of things coming as you read it. At least I could, because it feels a little, I don't want to say predictable because that sounds like that's a negative, which I don't view that as a negative always. But it did, like, you could see things coming. You could kind of see them coming, which is fine. That's not a negative. But he, for circumstances, has had to sneak on board and basically tells our main girl that he's going to hide on her ship and that she needs to help him or else. And so then identities are revealed and certain things are revealed, and yeah, I'm just being great and vague. Don't you love it? It was interesting. I will say I didn't love the romance. That seems to be a theme in this video. There's going to be 3 books in this video where that's a theme. I didn't care for the romance in the book. So like Mrs. Witherspoon Goes to War, Suspended in the Stars, and then another classic I'm fixing to mention. Now I'm excited about talking about that one. But I didn't really care for the romance in this one. But I'm learning I am particularly picky on my romance elements in my fantasy books. So like I started to like them at the end, but then at the beginning I was just like, she can't fall for this guy. He's threatening her. Why do girls keep falling for guys that threaten them? What's up with that in fantasy books? But I did overall enjoy it. I think if you really like sci-fi books, you may enjoy it as well. I liked it. I gave it 3 stars. Don't really know what else to say. I'm looking forward to book 2. because that is going to be about somebody else's point of view. Obviously, it's about somebody else's point of view. But then how this last book ended, I'm kind of like, wait a second. If I had book 2 now, I probably would have continued it because I wanted answers. So looking forward to book 2. I think it's releasing late summer, early fall. I don't even remember. I don't remember, but it's coming out, so I'll be reading it then. There's the cover. Isn't that a cool cover? These covers are great. So, yes, there is that. Now, moving on into classics. I read 2 books. I read my first Jane Austen, y'all. And I gave it 2 stars. Okay, so I was gonna make a reading vlog about reading my first Jane Austen and like watching the shows and all that, but that's not happening because I don't want to get yelled at in the comments. I already feel like that's a very high possibility in the comments of this video just because I'm gonna tell y'all I gave it 2 stars. Okay, so I feel like I need to defend myself. So here's the thing. This book is long. Why is it so long? It's like, what, 500 pages? Oh. Okay, it's not 500 pages, but it felt like 500 pages. I actually read the first chapter and had a lot of questions. Question, who's Isabella? This is the first time she's been mentioned. Who is Isabella and Emma? Alright, we're off to Google. Oh, it's Emma's sister. Okay, that was my theory. Wasn't sure. Alright, we're continuing on. What is I don't even know how to pronounce this word. Mr. Knightley is how old? Is this her, Mr. Knightley? Does he have a younger brother that's also called Mr. Knightley? So I ended up reading the ebook. So I read it as an ebook, but I found an audio book version of Emma here on YouTube. So I will link the first video of that. I listened to it at double speed because I was just like, yeah, this is... I was trying so hard, y'all. I was trying so hard to like this book and to understand what was happening. And the interesting thing is I really like Regency books. And that's one question I've gotten is like, Lindsey, you like Regency books, but you haven't read a Jane Austen. Like, what's up with that? I can explain now. So, it's not technically a Regency book, I know. It is a Regency book. It's a book written in a Regency time period, like the actual Regency time period. Tomato, y'all. So, there was that. There was, like, also things were spelt weird in here. Like, I've got to do research on why they were spelt different. Because, like, I have a British grandmother. She spells things the proper... Like, yeah, she does a lot of Z's instead of S's. But, like, there was other words in here. I was just like, what? What is this? So I definitely needed to listen to it. So that definitely helped. But I got halfway through this book and I was struggling with a capital S. Struggling. And so my mom and I watched the Gwyneth Paltrow 1996 movie and that helped. That helped. Like, okay, I wonder how is that scene going to happen in the book? Like the boxing hill, whatever that was. I was very curious how that would be in the book, so that did push me to read it. But then we continued and watched the BBC mini drama that was 2009, I think it was. 2006 or 2009, I don't remember. So we watched that one, and that one was very well done. I think they are honestly pretty comparable in my non-expert opinion. Please don't come for me. I thought they were comparable. They did well for the 2 hours. They did well for the 4 hours. And their respective times. And so I did end up finishing this. But this book took me 6 days to read, y'all. What was the last time a book took me 6 days to read? Probably a textbook in college. Like, I don't... This tested my love for Regency books. I haven't read a Regency book since I read this one in all reality. Because I'm just like, I think I'm a little burnt out right now. Because this was so thick. Why was this book so thick though? Like that is one gripe I have with it. I don't feel like it needed to be this long, but I do kind of blame Miss Bates for its length. I do feel like I know a few Miss Bates in my real life, which is saying something. But the other thing I don't want to mention this. The other thing I didn't care for in this book was Mr. Knightley. didn't like Mr. Knightley. Now here's the thing. They are 16 years apart. Him and Emma. And I have received comments. I received messages. Well intended. Don't get me wrong. I take no offense at those messages or comments. And people saying they're not sure why that's a big deal for some people to have an age gap. And in all honesty, it doesn't bother me that much. Like, I could get over it, you know? Had they met when she was a legal adult, could have gotten over it. But so, like, that 16-year gap, that's a bit much. But the main, like, I could have gotten over that. I could have gotten over the age gap. So please don't come for me about that. The problem I have with that age gap is that Mr. Knightley knew her as a child. A literal child. His younger brother is married to her older sister. That's a little weird, but going back to the fact that Mr. Knightley was 16 when Emma was born, knew her then. And so here's the thing, everyone raves about that love confession of the whole, if I loved you less, I could talk about it more. Great. That is good. I love it. That is a good line. We could have stopped it there though. We did not need to go into the, I think I've loved you since you were 13 at least. I'm sorry, what now? Officer? It's that one. Because, like I know, here's the thing. I know there was age gaps in the historical time period. My family tree probably had age gaps, like let's be honest, of that kind of thing. But to know the person when they're a minor and then kind of wait for them to grow up. And I know that probably happened in historical days. But nowadays, in our modern society, no, we're calling the police. So, and here's the thing, I can't help but view this book with my modern eyes because those are the only eyeballs I have, right? So, I'm gonna be a little freaked out about that. And I know some people that doesn't bother y'all because it's a historical book written in a historical time period. It is historical as far as you can get, kind of thing, and that's on y'all. That's with y'all. But for me, that is, like, I'm not okay with that personally. Like that, I don't want to feel like I'm judging or shaming or whatever word you want to use, but personally, I was just like, I'm not okay with that. That made me incredibly uncomfortable, and he felt like a big brother to me for her, because he was constantly like admonishing, is that how you say that word? Her, and like trying to guide her. I never got romance vibes from him. It was big brother vibes. So I don't know. Unpopular opinion. I feel like everybody loves Mr. Knightley. The amount of sweet friends messaging, I just dropped something. The amount of sweet friends messaging me going, Lindsey, I'm scared to read your review. It's fair. It's fair. I mean, I did go for it in my review, so there's that. I also gave thoughts on those 2 adaptions I read, so there you go. There you go. Also, quick note, they said God's name in vain like 5 times towards the end, and I just thought that was so random. Like, they never said it for like the first 400 pages, but then they said it 5 times there at the end. It felt out of character. It felt unnecessary. Not sure what that was about, so that also affected my rating because I was also listening to this as an audiobook as I was reading the ebook. I don't like hearing that. Like, it's just like, you know, you kind of get a little shiver down your spine, if you will. So, yeah, there was that. I read my first Jane Austen, but it was not a smashing success as I had hoped. I do love this copy of this book, though. With these roses, I have a rose garden. I am nearly positive these are all David Austen roses. I'm nearly positive. Like, that looks like Bathsheba. But anyway, so I want to keep this as like a trophy on my shelf that I read it, but at the same time, I might just stick it on my mom's bookshelf instead, because she likes it. She enjoyed watching the movies. The movies were enough. The movie and the miniseries we watched, that was enough for me. I don't think I'd ever reread it. I sincerely don't. I can see why people like Jane Austen's writing just based off this book. I can see why. I can also see why some people don't care for it. And I think that's fair as well. So, yeah, there's that. Hello, Daisy. Are you interrupting the video? You're interrupting the video. Are you gonna hang out in here? I got one more book left. I have one more book left. It's not a doggy book. Nope, not a doggy book. You want back out? 2 classics and 1 video. Who am I? This is never gonna happen again. Literally never gonna happen again. But I reread, technically listened as an audiobook, to A Little Princess by Frances Hodges Burnett. I recently listened to The Secret Garden, which, funny enough, with those 2 books, growing up I had read them and I actually liked A Little Princess more then, but now, listening to them, doing some gardening, some other projects, I think I preferred The Secret Garden. So I'd be really curious to know if you have read both of these or any of the author's other books, which one is your favorite? And then if you've read any of her other books, which one would you recommend? Because I didn't realize she wrote many other books, obviously, but I didn't realize it because I always just hear about these 2. So let me know your thoughts on that. But this book is about Sarah Crewe, and I feel like the reason this is a children's classic is purely because of her positive attitude towards whatever life throws at her. She is a very wealthy little girl and gets put into a boarding school, and then when things happen and completely change her life, she still keeps a very, very positive attitude in her imagination and everything. I do think I preferred A Secret Garden though for a few different reasons, but this was very sweet to re-listen to. Really, I actually did some of it when I was gardening, and then the majority of the book though I listened to when I was building the bookshelves, so that was fun. And yeah, overall very pleasant. I think I gave it a 3.5. I gave it a 3.5 star, and I think I also gave The Secret Garden a 3.5 or a 4, but it was different. They have different charms. The interesting thing though is they both have to do quite a bit with India, and I know when these were written, India was, what would you say, a country, a territory under the UK. So it makes sense, but I thought it was interesting they both had to do with India. So I'm curious to know if the author's other books have a connection to India as well or not, but I'm gonna check those out. Let me know if y'all have read any of those though. I would really appreciate it. And with that, let me gather all the books and we will have our final little chat. So I think that was a total of 15 books today, and here is our stack. So A Little Princess, I'm keeping that one obviously. Emma, I might actually end up putting on my mom's bookshelf. We'll see. We'll see. Gentleman's Spy I won't be keeping. History Lost and Found I don't plan to keep. Bailey McKenzie I do not plan to keep. Collateral Damage I'm keeping. Acceptable Risk I'm not sure yet. And then A Lady's Guide to Marvels and Misadventures I will be keeping because I bought that one, because I liked it. As far as the other books, I think I plan to get a copy of, well, definitely The Kingdom's True Queen, Road Trip Rescue, I pronounced that weird, and then Jack and the Tornado I think I would buy as well. So I have 3 books from this list. Overall, not bad. You know, I think that's pretty good. Yes, I had 3 1-stars in this video. That's sad. That's terribly disappointing to say the least, but I mean, I had some decent reads. A lot of the average though, I don't know what the average was for this video, but I feel like overall wasn't bad. A lot of 3.5-star books and 6-7 books off of my physical TBR, which it desperately needs to get books off of its shelves. So that was very positive. Very happy about that. I do think that's all for this video. I feel like I've been talking y'all's ear off. I'm so sorry. I hope you enjoyed this one, even despite my controversial opinions. If you feel differently about Emma, you could put like the tomato emoji, and I won't completely take it as you throwing tomatoes at me. You're just giving me tomatoes so I can put on a sandwich. That's how I'm gonna look at it. Yeah, there we go. But if you agree that that is kind of sketchy in Emma, I don't know what emoji to put. I don't know, a check mark or something. I don't know. I don't think anyone's gonna be putting that though. I feel like I'm an anomaly in that. I'm an anomaly in my thoughts about that book. But I do plan to try Jane Austen's other books. I've heard that Northanger Abbey, who recommended that one to me? Someone recommended that one to me and said that one would probably be great for you. Oh, Miss Christina Bayer, who wrote the Wormwood Abbey. That that series that I've really been enjoying, she recommended that one, and I'm curious now on how she talked about that one, so I'll probably read that one at some point, but I will try out Jane Austen's other books. I bit off more than I could chew by reading her longest one. I will fully admit that. So that was probably partially my fault on that, but that is it for this video. I hope you enjoyed this video. Again, despite my unpopular opinions, what did we think of the new filming setup? I don't know. We didn't move around. I said we were going to move around, but I just stayed here, so sorry for that. And now I think, let's see. The books we're going to keep. This one. I'm going to not keep Acceptable Risk for the time being because I don't feel like I'll keep that one in the long run. I'll see how the other two books go, but I don't think I will be. And then Emma. So, there, and then I've got another little stack of books. So, once that shelf gets full, I think, hang on, I'm going to sneeze. False alarm, I'm not going to sneeze. Once that shelf gets full, because each shelf holds about 35 books roughly, I think we'll do a video adding them in. You know how I did that one video where, I don't know when I did it. It was over a year ago probably now. But where we added books into my bookshelf. I think we're going to do that. We're going to do that maybe like every time a shelf gets full. So every like 20 to 35 books maybe. We'll do that. And I really enjoyed filming that video. Y'all gave me really good feedback on it too. So look forward to that. Probably though will still be a couple recent reads out. Because I don't add any books to my shelves until I've talked about them in a recent reads, just to keep things separated and organized in my brain and in my room. But that is now truly it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know if we have any similar thoughts on these books. Do you have any of these you want to read or maybe not read now? Let me know all of your thoughts and comments kindly, please, in the comments below, and we can chat there. I am Lindsey from the blog Books for Christian Girls at blogspot.com, where there is a new review every Monday and Friday. I try to post a new video on this channel every Friday, and then I am also on Instagram and Goodreads and TikTok, sharing book recommendations while my dog barks in the background. She says hello, and happy reading to you all. I hope you have an absolutely lovely rest of your day, y'all. Bye!